September is being observed as National Suicide Prevention Month. It's a reminder of what should be happening every day of the year, that all of us should keep an eye out for warning signs, be ready to listen, and above all, know there's a place to call for help. To tell us about that, as well as the need for volunteers, is the Executive Director of Samaritans, Inc., Steve Mongeau. Thank you very much for being with us, Steve.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here, Chris.
This is a problem that's always with us, but suicide, is it getting better? Is it getting worse? What are the numbers saying, Steve?
I mean, the numbers tell us that over the last 16 to 18 years, the rates have risen both in Massachusetts and across the country by 25 to 30%. If there's any silver lining in that, which sounds hard to identify, it's that things have been somewhat more flatlined over the last 4 to 5 years. In Massachusetts, for example, we've been hovering around 600 tragic deaths by suicide, a little above, a little below each of the last 5 years. So those of us doing this work are hoping that maybe we're at a point where we can start to turn that trend.
We don't automatically associate suicide with substance use disorder, but we have an opioid crisis, and I have to wonder, is there maybe some connection?
There has to be. I think when we depend on the Department of Public Health for the data in Massachusetts, and in their reporting they identify substance abuse in 30 to 40% of deaths by suicide. And that's linked either because they find residual drug or alcohol in the individual, or that individual was seeking treatment. So when they do the backup study to figure out make the determination for cause of death, 30 to 40% of the time with suicide, drug or alcohol abuse was part of the challenge.
Well, part of your mission is to take calls from people who are in a crisis, but other times you're also spreading a message out there that we should be looking for warning signs. What kinds of things are warning signs?
I mean, the things I try to stress, you can rattle off this dramatic weight gain and dramatic weight loss and so on and so forth. But I think what is easier for some of us to connect to is if you have a friend who maybe just a pattern of what they did change. So maybe I'll just use teens as an example. Maybe you used to regularly go to the movies on every other weekend with a group, and you notice one of your friends suddenly tells you going to the movies is stupid. They don't want to go anymore. And they start complaining about the other group of friends and where they used to get along with people. And sometimes instead of reacting to that behavior, it might mean you should stop and say, hey, is something else going on? I'm worried about you. You seem to not be enjoying yourself doing things we used to enjoy doing together. Can you tell me if something else is going on? Because we know that when people struggle with depression, they don't want to come out and tell you. If it gets to the point they're actually thinking about suicide, most people will not volunteer to share that information. They don't want to burden you with it. So if you can start the conversation, and in fact, if someone were to say something along the lines of, hey, no one would even miss me if I never showed up again, you need to look them in the eye and say, I am really worried now. Are you thinking of suicide? You scared me, and I care about you.
We might automatically associate suicide, with somebody who's living a terrible life. There's a terrible misfortune and that provokes it or something. And then we read that someone, committed suicide, who was a happy student who had lots of,
Right.
things to look forward to, and no one can understand what was going on. What could have been going on?
I mean, what we see in the data, as I said, often there's substance abuse, but the other thing, relationships, interpersonal relationships have a dramatic impact on people. And when people are struggling, as I said earlier, they often hide their pain, especially within your family. So people will tell us who have attempted a suicide and survived that attempt. They'll tell us, I didn't really want to die, and I did everything I could to hide my pain from my family because I didn't want to be a burden to them, or they wanted to hide it from their close friends. And that's why in the community, it just makes sense to be on the lookout for one another. We do suicide prevention workshops in schools, but we also do them in places of business and for any group, nurses, guidance counselors, coaches who are working with other groups to say, here are some of the warning signs, risk factors. If you hear some of these things mentioned, here are some questions you might want to ask about it.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with Steve Mongeau from the Samaritans Inc. Steve, if you know a family member or a friend who is exhibiting some of these signs, aside from calling the Samaritans maybe, what should they be doing?
What we say is make sure you talk about it, that you open. If you're struggling yourself, please be willing to share that pain with someone, because we can't identify the pain if you're hiding it. And if calling the helpline, we're available at 877-870-HOPE, which is 4673. You can call or text 24/7. We won't tell you what to do, but when you're speaking with us, if we during that conversation think that some other resources might be helpful to you, we'll ask you if you want to explore some other resources as well. But the beauty of reaching out to the helpline is you can unload anything you want. And maybe you're not really suicidal yet, but maybe you're just despondent, you can't sleep at night, you have high anxiety. You can unload all the issues via call or text with us, and you don't have to see us the next day. We're not going to ask you any questions. So you can unload, get it out of your system, and hopefully move forward with a little less weight on your shoulders.
When I was checking out your website, one thing that caught my attention was you say just listening to somebody who has a problem helps restore their sense of self-control. Why is that?
We know that when people are struggling, one of the things they want is control. So if you're the normal human reaction if someone tells you they're thinking of hurting themselves is you want to tell them, well, don't do that. And you have all these things to live for, and it's like, what is wrong with you, kind of thing. And we're there to say, well, that's okay. Other people have felt this way. Tell me more about it. And what you find is if people feel accepted for who and what they are, and are able to feel a sense that you care on the other line of that conversation. I have a quote here that I brought with me that kind of gets the point across. This was from an individual that sent this note and said, "You helped me years ago. I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to face my problem. Suicide seemed like the only way. I called you. The magic words were, I care. You people then gave me a chance." So we know if we can get someone through that darkest moment, that trough, because often, although there's a buildup, and suicide is very complex, it can also be a compulsive act in the moment. And if you can talk through that, and we can share a few open-ended questions that help you think through, maybe I can wait another hour, maybe I can wait another day, and then maybe during that next hour or day, you feel a little better and are able to move forward.
When I follow news about suicide, I sometimes see different age groups that come into the picture. Sometimes it's young people, sometimes it's older people, or even middle-aged. Is there some age group that's more at risk?
Middle-aged people have the highest rates of suicide by far. It's middle-aged white men have the highest rate of suicide in the state and in the nation. What you often hear with young people is it's the second leading cause of death for those between the ages of 14 and 25, which is just so tragic because, of course, people in that age bracket aren't dying of some other health issues. So it's all other accidents combined, then suicide is the second leading cause of death among youth. So that's why that is often called out. And one of the things we've been able to do that we're excited about is we started text on the helpline. So again, I just want to stress you can text us 24/7 at 877-870-4673. And we know that the vast majority of those reaching out by text, and we're getting over 700 a month now, are younger people, and that's their preferred method of communication.
I know you mentioned the value of listening, and I guess you need volunteers to do that. So if people are interested, what should we be thinking about?
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. We depend on, right now we have 324 active volunteers, and I always stress that if you just believe in your heart that people can help other people, you're eligible to be a volunteer. So you can go to our website at Samaritans Hope, all one word, SamaritansHope.org, and explore volunteer opportunities. There's about a 15-minute video you can watch, and then possibly explore The commitment we ask for is 4 hours a week for up to 9 months. And again, all the services we provide are dependent on volunteers. We also have volunteers who help us with grief support meetings for those who have lost a loved one to suicide during their grief journey. And they're some of the nicest people you'll ever meet in all walks of life. We have 15-year-olds to retirees, every race, every ethnicity you can imagine. We're a really diverse group, and suicide doesn't discriminate, and neither do the volunteers.
Finally, before the end of the month, you also have an event to raise some funds and awareness. Tell us about that.
Yeah, our 5K, it's our single biggest fundraising event of the year, and over half of our funding comes from individual donors. This is the 20th anniversary of the 5K Run Walk for Suicide Prevention. It's at DCR's Artisani Park on Saturday morning, September 29th. Registration's open at 8. Race starts at 10, and you can go to Samaritans5k.org and register. And please consider signing up a team, or you can make a donation at that website as well.
And Steve, I'm going to ask you one more time the helpline number, please.
Yes, 877-870-HOPE, which is 4673.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Chris.
Steve Mongeau from Samaritans, Inc.